The cell door closes with a metallic thud, a sound that vibrates through the cold concrete, heavy and final. Bernard Madoff sits on the narrow bed, his back bent, his eyes fixed on the floor that reflects nothing but silence. The empire he built with whispers and illusions is gone. Billions evaporated, fortunes destroyed, lives shattered. Once praised as a genius of Wall Street, he is now a prisoner, a ghost in an orange uniform. The air smells of rust and disinfectant, and somewhere in the distance, a guard coughs. Madoff barely hears it. Inside his mind, another sound dominates the echo of applause, of admiration, of blind trust. The sound of the world believing in him, a symphony that once crowned him king. He closes his eyes and sees the beginning. The boy from Queens, the son of immigrants, raised on the promise that America rewarded ambition. He was restless, driven, unwilling to wait his turn. In 1960, with nothing but 5,000 borrowed dollars, he set up his first investment firm. Small office, cheap furniture, but a hunger that filled the space with fire. Clients came, first a trickle, then a flow. He spoke with calm confidence, convincing, almost hypnotic. "Trust me," he would say, and they did. Wall Street was chaos in those days, a marketplace of noise and desperation. But Madoff was different. He saw patterns where others saw madness. He built his name on electronic trading, years before the system became the backbone of the financial world. "Bernie is a visionary," they whispered. And soon, the whispers turned into a claim. His firm grew. His name appeared in the right circles. Politicians, celebrities, bankers, they all wanted to sit at his table. But behind the calm exterior, behind the polite smile and the tailored suits, something darker was taking shape. He wanted more. More power, more recognition, more control. The legitimate success wasn't enough. Not for him. Not for the man who dreamed of owning Wall Street itself. That's when the first shadows crept in. It began small. A promise of steady returns, consistent, safe. Returns too good to be true, but too seductive to question. Clients invested, and when they asked for proof, he showed them numbers flawless, impeccable, printed on paper that smelled of authority. Profits that never faltered, even in times of market chaos. A miracle, they thought. A genius, they said. And Madoff nodded, silently feeding the lie. His office on the 17th floor became a temple. People waited months, sometimes years, just to be allowed in, to be chosen by him. Because Bernie Madoff didn't need clients. He selected believers, and they begged for it. They begged to give him their money. Retirement funds, life savings, fortunes inherited, and fortunes earned, poured into his hands like offerings to a god. Downstairs, in a locked floor that few ever entered, the machinery of deception churned. Fake statements, forged trades, balances that glittered on screens but had no existence in reality. A pyramid built not on stone but on trust. And trust, as Bernie well knew, was the most dangerous currency of all. He was at the top. Private jets, mansions, yachts with polished decks glinting under the sun. At charity galas, he was seated at the front, smiling with politicians, shaking hands with kings of finance. His wife, Ruth, dazzled in diamonds. His sons worked under him, carrying the Madoff name like a dynasty, the American dream perfected. And yet, underneath it all, he knew it was a dream laced with rot. "Dad, how do you do it?" a colleague once asked, half joking, half in awe. Madoff smiled, a thin smile that revealed nothing. "Consistency," he replied. "The market is chaos, but I am not." For decades, no one questioned him. Regulators looked and saw nothing. Analysts whispered doubts, but found no proof. It was as if the entire financial system wanted him to be real, needed him to be real. He was too big, too powerful, too untouchable. And Madoff played his role perfectly. But every empire built on lies has cracks, and his cracks began with whispers of doubt. A mathematician named Harry Markopoulos screamed into the void that Madoff's returns were impossible, a statistical fraud. "It's a giant Ponzi scheme," he warned. For years, his warnings were ignored. Madoff kept smiling, kept printing, kept growing. But time is a predator that cannot be silenced forever. December 2008. The markets collapsed. The world trembled under the weight of crisis. Investors came calling, desperate to withdraw billions. For the first time, Madoff couldn't deliver. The machine stalled. The illusion wavered. His sons confronted him, eyes wide, voices shaking. "Is it true, Dad? Is it all fake?" Silence. Then his voice low, almost a whisper. "Yes, it's all one big lie." That night, the empire died. The next morning, the FBI came. He sat in his penthouse, wrapped in a blanket, waiting. The knock on the door was gentle, almost polite, but the handcuffs were cold and final. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, neighbors stared. Bernard Madoff, once the king of Wall Street, was led away like a criminal. Because that's what he was. And now, in the silence of his cell, he replays it all. The greed, the hunger, the endless need to be admired. He remembers the faces of those who trusted him, the retirees left penniless, the charities destroyed, the friends who never suspected until it was too late. The sound of applause has faded, replaced by the echo of anger, betrayal, despair. He lies back on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling that offers no escape. Somewhere, beyond these walls, the world moves on. But in here, time has stopped. The man who fooled the world is just another prisoner, waiting for the darkness to take him. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a thought lingers. A question that burns through the silence like a curse. Did he regret it? Or did he still believe, even now, that he had beaten the system, if only for a while? The shadows in the cell stretch longer. His story, like his empire, is far from over. Because the true weight of his fall is not in money lost, but in trust broken, lives destroyed, and the haunting truth that a single man's ambition can corrupt an entire world. Bernard Madoff closes his eyes. The darkness welcomes him back. The cell grows colder as the hours pass, but Madoff does not move. The silence presses down like a weight, heavy and suffocating. He thinks of the courtroom, of the faces that stared at him, victims, prosecutors, former friends. Rows of eyes, burning with betrayal. The air was thick with fury, yet he sat still, almost detached, as if watching a play in which he was both actor and villain. "I am deeply sorry," he had said, his voice calm, almost eerily calm. But the words fell dead in the air. Sorry was nothing compared to the billions lost, the lives shattered, the dreams burned to ash. He remembers the gasps when the sentence was read, 150 years. A symbolic punishment, an eternity designed not to keep him locked away, but to etch his name forever as a warning. He walked out of that courtroom not as Bernard Madoff, financier, philanthropist, visionary. He walked out as Bernard Madoff, the monster. The newspapers feasted on his story. The biggest fraud in history, they screamed. His name, once a golden brand, was now poison. Friends erased him, clients cursed him, family fractured beyond repair. His sons Mark and Andrew were broken men, carrying a burden too heavy to bear. Mark took his own life 2 years later, on the anniversary of his father's arrest. Andrew succumbed to cancer, a disease gnawed deeper by shame. The sins of the father did not remain his alone. They seeped into the bloodline, a curse without end. In the prison yard, Madoff sometimes hears the other inmates whisper. Some despise him, others envy him. "That's the guy who stole billions," they murmur, glancing his way. But the reality is simpler. He is just another old man in a gray jumpsuit. His wealth stripped, his power reduced to nothing. The only luxury he owns now is memory, and memory is the cruelest possession of all. He recalls the nights of triumph, the galas glittering with chandeliers, the taste of champagne on his tongue, the soft weight of applause as he stood before crowds who adored him. He remembers the yacht on the Mediterranean, the sun painting the water gold, his grandchildren laughing on deck, innocent of the empire's foundation. All of it gone sold, seized, auctioned off, to repay debts that could never be repaid. Sometimes he wonders when the lie became bigger than himself. Was it the first forged statement? The first client who received profits that weren't real? Or was it earlier, when he decided that success alone wasn't enough, that he needed to be untouchable, a legend carved into the stone of Wall Street? He tells himself he did it to protect investors, to keep the illusion alive until the market recovered. But deep down, he knows the truth. He did it because he could, because power became an addiction stronger than any drug. At night, the prison grows restless with muffled voices, the clang of metal, the shuffle of feet in distant corridors. Madoff lies awake, staring into the dark. He thinks of Ruth, the woman who stood by him longer than most thought possible. Once partners in glittering nights, now a widow in everything but name. He imagines her silence, her loneliness, her shame when strangers spit her last name like a curse. Did she ever truly forgive him? Or was she simply another prisoner of his ambition? The past clings to him like smoke. He sees the faces of charities ruined, of families bankrupted, of pensioners forced into despair. He hears their voices, accusing, begging, cursing. He wonders if hell is not fire and torment, but this an eternity of remembering, of replaying the damage without escape. One day, in the prison cafeteria, an inmate leaned close and whispered, "You fooled the whole world, old man." "That's something." Madoff looked up, his eyes hollow, and replied, "And in the end, I fooled myself." The words hung in the air, heavy with something that wasn't quite regret, wasn't quite pride. As his health decays, cancer gnawing at his body, the man who once seemed immortal becomes frail, fragile, forgotten. Guards lead him slowly through the halls, his steps unsteady. He is no longer the titan of finance, no longer the king of deception. He is just a man counting his final days in a place where the walls never change, but the world outside will never forget. His name has become a symbol of greed without limits, of trust betrayed, of a system blind until it was too late. Textbooks will carry his story, documentaries will dissect his scheme, and his victims will never find full justice. His empire, built on shadows, has crumbled into dust, but the scars remain carved into history. Bernard Madoff sits alone in his cell, the fluorescent light humming above him, his hands trembling slightly. He closes his eyes, and in the darkness, he sees the one thing he can never escape, the mirror of himself. The boy who wanted to be great, the man who pretended to be invincible, and the old ghost who finally understood the cost. In the end, there is no applause, no empire, no redemption, only silence. And silence, Bernard realizes, is the cruelest punishment of all.